let's talk about morality now. I just got off a bender speaking about Seven Psychopaths, if you were there. So, let's talk about In Bruges. That's where Daddy's from. So, for this being Mcdonagh's first feature film, can you believe it? I love this movie. With a history of playwriting, Mcdonagh just artfully sets up these good stories, and each detail has been meticulously thought out. The characters, locations, and the conversations, they set us up for the upcoming scenes and eventual climax, and they tie the plot together with grace and subtlety. And this is something that you can really see his playwriting as has kind of influenced. And this is also usually seen through the location that he picks to put the characters in. There's a feeling of isolation, but we also sort of feel like we're in a particular world, and that we know this world, and that we become very familiar with it. So, In Bruges is set in, and you won't believe this, in the quaint and beautiful town of Bruges in Belgium. And similar to, you see, I'm about to talk about it now, in The Banshees of Inisherin, similar to his successor films, The Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and The Banshees of Inisherin, these characters exist within a singular and extremely spacious location. But because of the bright and fully encompassing camera angles, there's this weird sense that there's actually a lot of isolation challenging the characters and creating a feeling of claustrophobia or entrapment within a town or city, no matter its size or population. And Mcdonagh draws off of experiences from his own life, as we spoke about prior, and each of his stories are inspired by small moments he witnessed in the past. And In Bruges was formed after he visited Bruges, and he felt a sense of both fantasia but also boredom. And he turned these two contradicting emotions into Ray and Ken, the film's protagonists. And Mcdonagh is exploring his personal understanding of what it means to create this story, surprising himself and letting the story unfold naturally. So this is because he's openly questioning what it does and does not know. We as an audience are welcome to interpret these topics. What is going on over here? We as an audience are welcome to interpret these topics or circumstances. Are you that angry at a ribbon? So Mcdonagh is exploring his personal growth and what it means to exist and create a story. He's surprising himself and letting the story unfold naturally. And because he's openly questioning what he does and does not know, we as an audience are also welcome to interpret these topics or circumstances by applying our own perception of living. So In Bruges is the poster child for good dialogue in my books. It's the dialogue that furthers the plot. It's adding depth, context, and backstory in a way that simple flashbacks could not. So, still following the cinematic rules of showing and not telling, Mcdonagh lets the characters give away only what is necessary for that moment, and he never strays into the realm of obvious. So we're challenged into putting the pieces of the past together and assume these relationships and dynamics between the characters with very little to go off of. And this also then allows the viewer to base their opinions on the characters as they are during their trip to In Bruges, instead of relying on pre-established relationships. So creating this type of ambiguity ensures that the characters have the freedom to prove themselves to us and can surprise us with their choices or actions. So we have no idea how the characters will interact or react with one another, and that then keeps us on the edge of our seats. And the chemistry, it's no secret that Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson are just undeniably strong in that department. This dog is eating everything. You can't eat that. Can't eat that. That's mine. So it's no secret that Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson have this undeniable strong chemistry, and that's further seen in The Banshees of Inisherin. But they ebb and flow. They allow each other space to react. They never overwhelm or steal the show. This is this Bert and Ernie dynamic, and their varying levels of energy help emphasize the difference in their characters' temperaments. So Brendan Gleeson plays Ken, a hitman. He is calm, stoic, and has a thoughtful demeanor, and we know he takes his time to think about his words, and so we see him as the voice of reason in stark contrast to his obnoxious and impulsive counterpart, played by Colin Farrell, Ray. So when the duo finds himself in Bruges, the first quarter of the film, I should mention that Ray is a young hitman who is working with Ken. He's, as referenced above, obnoxious, impulsive, sort of says the first thing on his mind, does not ignore social cues, though he knows he shouldn't. But anyway, so when the duo finds himself in Bruges, the first quarter of the film gives us insight into their dynamics. So Ken is mature, he's more experienced and father-like and patient and understanding towards Ray's youthful, inexperienced, adventurous attitude. And Ken doesn't mind putting Ray in his place, but is also just as quick to comfort him and reassure him when needed. So their friendship dynamic is put to the test, and Ken is challenged to reconsider his ethics when his boss, Harry, well, their boss, Harry, a certified cutthroat criminal played by Ray Fiennes, tasks Ken with killing Ray. So let's talk about Harry. Harry's branded as the antagonist before he even graces the screen. So we are forced to accept that he's a dangerous man and is capable of these terrible things without having even evidence to prove otherwise. And we're relying 100% on dialogue, physical or facial expressions from Ray and Ken, as well as what we've seen them do violence-wise to instill this idea of Harry being a deadly threat. And I mean, you've got to be some type of genius to speak like Harry and still manage to be a frightening villain. And Ray Fiennes and McDonagh have done that. So Rafe, I praise for bringing such dimension to a character. We were given almost nothing to go off of. Harry is moralistic. You can be a murderer and have a moral compass somehow. He believes that sticking to your principles. He doesn't say it only a few times throughout the film, but he matches those actions when need be, especially in it's not even the climax at the end of the film per se. So Harry's a complex individual. He's capable of feeling sympathy for his peers, his family, and his children, but then has cruelty while carrying out crimes that align with his philosophies or principles. There's a scene where he gets angry due to a work call and smashes the phone, and his wife comes in and he accidentally speaks with the same tone that he did moments earlier to his work, to the people at work. And that sort of gives us a small example of these two different sides of him that he has and how these wires can very easily be crossed, and so therefore he has to work on making sure they don't. So there's no leeway with Harry. It either is or it isn't, and this allows him to consider every single situation individually. Sometimes he's agreeing and understanding with the protagonist and understands where they're coming from, but he doesn't act on impulse. He acts on a basis of ethics, or a base of ethics, and enforces the threat that he is. Okay, so Harry acts not on impulse, but with, on the base of ethics. He enforces what a true theory is because he is unwilling to waver and is so certain of his actions. So we feel like we know him, but the look in his eyes has us questioning what Harry will do next, and his unpredictability becomes the most frightening. Ultimately, Harry's demise is due to this adamance on sticking to moralistic principles, and this serves as an example that he feels the need to punish himself the same way he would punish others. And he shows the severity of having unwavering beliefs and the ineffectivity of leaving no leeway. I don't really want to spoil more than that. I think I've spoiled enough, so I won't tell you exactly what happens. So let's just move on to talking about In Bruges and what it explores. And it explores the complexities of guilt and regret. And these characters are suffering from dark pasts. A string of murders follow them across the continent, and there's never been a space for them to truly reflect on their grievances. So in the quiet and self-proclaimed boring scenery of Bruges, the lack of things to do opens a door for characters to think and reflect. And as we know, thinking doesn't always do you good when a can of worms can spill out and you have no resources to safely repent or discuss these sort of feelings with. So Ray, Colin Farrell, does his best to keep busy, but each time he does stop, it results in some form of emotional turmoil, and he's incapable of expressing how deeply sick and disturbed he is about his own actions that have led him to this point. On the other hand, Ken, this peacefulness and fairy tale-esque atmosphere of Bruges provides him with a safe space to recollect and reflect, and he embraces this quietness and looks back at his life so far, and he's finding a way to make peace with his past, and how he's going to move forward. So Ray runs and Ken sits. But to Ken, Ray's this version of a man he once was or could have been, and he's sort of hopeful that Ray can turn things around and has the emotional empathy to do so. So when it's clear that Ray doesn't feel the same way about himself, Ken doubles down and follows his own moral compass instead of following Harry's orders, and turns on Harry in favor of helping Ray right his wrongs and see that there is still a future. This dog is in its biting phase, and it's very dangerous. So This movie is dark. It's coldly violent. It's not nearly as bright and playful as Seven Psychopaths. It's sprinkled with these soft moments of tenderness and witty, speedy dialogue. And McDonagh really takes advantage of the scenery. He finds his way to In Bruges into a character of its own, this playground, and he optimizes beautiful, powerful architecture, and he leans into that Gothic religious, the buildings and the artwork to create this looming undertone of this overarching theme of good versus evil. So the line between both is blurred into a grave ground for the characters to battle their own beliefs and their consequences of their past, present, and future. So I find In Bruges particularly poetic. The dialogue in hindsight cleverly guides and deepens each interaction, and then paired with the solemn score and the sharp wide shots, there's such a beauty and peacefulness that breaks up and blends with intense sorrow and violence. And this is one of my favorite screenplays of all time. So, and McDonagh is one of my top writers and top directors of all time. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that one. As much as I also have to say, redact what you said about my cunt fucking kids.